Welcome everybody to today's sit down. Now normally we dive into the achievements of our honored guest and what they've achieved throughout their career. With a gentleman, with a young man here today, it's very rare that you have an elite athlete. I normally get experts in a field. This young man is an elite, absolute professional athlete, and there's nothing really that he hasn't achieved in terms of rather in the field of mountain biking and road cycling. His name is Shaun-Nick Bester. Welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, before we get into the conversation of your life, I just want to dive in to some of the professional coaching that you do. You've got a company called Bester Performance. You do nutritional training, you do one-on-one, you train athletes to go and cycle on the road, as well as athletes cycling on mountain bike trails. You are fluent in a couple of languages: Spanish, English, Afrikaans, Dutch. Did I miss anything?
No, that's about it. I also do understand Portuguese very
Portuguese
well.
as well?
I prefer not to try and speak it because I don't want to mix languages. So
Okay.
Spanish and Portuguese is some of the words and the grammar is quite close to each other.
Okay, if you don't mind, can we keep it in English here for the sake of this interview? Thank you very much. Loving father, devoted husband, and just an elite performer. Welcome to our show, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Bester, from Bester Performance, if we could magically, you're 31 years old, now you're a very young man, 6 years younger than me, a lot fitter than I think 99.9999% of the planet, but if we could magically bring the 17-year-old version of you, he comes here, sits down with us on the couch, like, who is that person? Where's your head at 17? Who are you at the age of 17 in high school?
Sure. Since I was actually 14 years old, my dream was to become a European professional cyclist.
On road or mountain bike? What was your initial dream?
So my initial dream was on road.
On road, okay.
Yeah, so I actually started out mountain biking when I was 12 years old. The one day my dad went to do a training run and he told me to come with. And that day I think I was 11 years old. That's where the bug bit me.
Okay.
So I went with him, I joined him with the bike, he was running. He ran from our house in Amandasig all the way to Gesina, where my grandmother stayed.
How long is that distance?
So the route that we did was about 25 kilometers.
So for anybody that doesn't know who your dad is, I mean, your dad is Nick Bester. He's the legendary, Ironman winner twice.
Yeah.
Like he's won most of the if I may say, the triathlons, biathlons. There's nothing that he doesn't compete in. I mean, he's 62. We had an off-camera conversation, and you say that he still trains 3 times a day at the age of 62.
Yeah, like I said, he has a lot of time on his hands to train.
So you were
even though he's
exposed
very
to
busy.
And you were exposed to that at the age of 12. He ran 25 kilometers, and you cycled behind him.
I went with him. So
okay.
I took the mountain bike. It was just a plain entry-level mountain bike. He said I must join him. I actually enjoyed it so much that's where the bug bit me. From there on, I started to train a bit more. When they would go out for the easy training rides, I started to ride with a group that they used to be in our area. We did about 20 to 30 kilometers on a training day. And yeah, from when I was about 13 years old, I started to compete on mountain bike only. And then when I turned 14, I went into the sub-junior category. And then I went to the national junior and youth and sub-junior tour, which was held in Harry Smith.
Okay.
So there, the bug on the road actually bit me.
And for the first time?
For the first time.
And you're 14 years old then?
I was 14 years old.
Okay. Beautiful.
So I did well there. I think I was second on the first stage. So I had the green jersey, the sprinter's jersey.
Okay.
Because on the first stage, if you win that, you get the yellow jersey,
Yes.
which is the leader's jersey. And the guy who's leading, he can't wear all of the jerseys. So they gave me the sprinter's jersey there. And then I actually defended it all the way to the finish.
Beautiful. First time on the road.
First time on the road. So I enjoyed that a lot. And then I started to look into the European races that was showing on television. So back then there wasn't really YouTube or anything that you could
Yes.
look it up. So I started to speak to other cyclists as to which races to watch. And it got so intriguing that is all I wanted to be since I was 14 years old, is a professional European road cyclist.
So how does that, because, you know, I don't use the term elite lightly. You know, normally we get people that are exceptionally good in their craft. You're an elite athlete. I know what went on in my mind at 16, 17. You know, what I didn't have a daily routine. I went to school, I fooled around a bit, I came home, I had time to play. You know, how does your routine look in high school? If you don't mind sharing with us, because you are extremely disciplined. So were you always that way, or did you learn to be that way?
So I actually played rugby until I was 16 years old.
Okay.
So I was doing the cycling and the rugby. So
Okay.
after rugby practice in the afternoons,
When everyone's tired.
when everyone is finished training, my dad would pitch up with the bike after the rugby training, and then we would go for a little ride.
What's a little ride?
We do like 15 or 20 kilometers. So that would be about an hour's ride
Okay.
after the rugby training. So I kept on doing that until from 14 to about 16 and a half years old. Then I decided I enjoy the cycling so much that I'm going to start specializing in cycling itself. So initially I started with mountain biking, cross-country racing, where I managed to win a lot of national medals, so bronze and silvers. I never actually won a national championship, but I came second and third on so many occasions. I don't know how it never happened. And then when I was 18 years old, I got the opportunity to join the South African national road cycling team that was selected to go to Europe to compete
Beautiful.
in all of the Nations Cups, which are World Cups essentially. It's just called Nations Cups on the road cycling scene. We went to most of them. I also went to the Junior World Championships. It went really well. At most of the Nations Cups, I was close to the top 20. At the Junior World Road Racing Championships in Moscow, I actually came 25th. What happened there was I was in the main group. There was a breakaway of 9 riders. We had one of our South Africans in there, Johan van Zyl. He got dropped about, I think, 20 kilometers to go. Then there was still a group of 8 riders, more or less.
What does that mean, got dropped?
He got ridden out of the break. So the front guys left him behind, and then he came back. He couldn't keep up to the front.
Couldn't keep up.
Yeah. Then the bunch caught him. The bunch is the big group of riders that's still left of the main race.
So I just want to analyze that because it fascinates me. I mean, off camera, I shared a story. My first bike ride that I did a couple of months ago, I didn't have the right shorts. I didn't have anything. You know, it was an unplanned event. I had lots of fun. I had Aina afterwards, but I had lots of fun. So the bunch is the group that the big group where
that's the main group. That's the group on the road where all of the main contenders is usually in.
So that's the good guys, but they're not great. So the front runners are the guys that are setting the pace.
No, I won't say that. So cycling tactics is much more complex than if you take running, for example, or any other endurance sport. For example, if you take triathlon, there you go as hard as you can for as long as you can, and the guy who can hold out the longest, the guy is most probably going to win. But like I explained to you earlier on, it doesn't help you you can ride at 45 kilometers an hour for 5 hours, but you can't do a 10-second sprint and go to 65. Then you're never going to win a race. So what happened in Moscow is there was a early group that rode away. There was no one really willing to do the chasing in the main peloton. So it was a group of about 9 or 10 riders, I'm not exactly sure. And about 20 Ks to go, our South African rider that was represented in the breakaway got ridden out of the break. When he came back to the break, I saw an opportunity with 3.4 kilometers to go to actually go on the attack and try and bridge to the front group. So I put in a big attack. I didn't manage to bridge to the front group. I stayed away from the main peloton, so I was essentially lying in 9th position until 700 meters to go. Then the main peloton caught me again, and I managed to finish in 25th position overall. So it was a good race, a good experience, and that actually led to my first European contract. So it was in 2010 I went to race for a small amateur team called CC Spol in Spain.
In Spain, okay.
In Spain.
So you lived in Spain?
Yes.
Lived in Spain, trained in Spain?
Yes.
Learned how to speak Spanish?
Yeah, so directly after school, I actually got a bursary from Varsity College that they would pay any of my expenses for any subjects I wanted to study.
Beautiful.
But my dream was always to become a European professional cyclist, and because I got this opportunity, I just turned it down and took.
You went for it.
I just went for it, put everything that I could into making this dream work. I went to Spain, not knowing the language. I stayed in a small town there. No one could speak English. I still remember the first time I had to race. The manager of CC Spol, his name was Horacio Barros.
Okay, he could speak English, hopefully.
No, he couldn't speak English. So
That's interesting.
In the region where I stayed, it was in Galicia. So Galicia is on the northwestern border, on the northwestern coast of Spain, just above Portugal.
Okay.
So they speak a mixture of Spanish and Portuguese. It's called Galician.
Okay.
I did not know this before the time. So I pitch up at the airport. Johan van Zyl, who was in the breakaway at World Champs, was with me there. And we get to the airport there in Vigo, which is a small town where the airport was based closest to the town where we were going to stay. And Horacio starts speaking to me and to Johan. And I look at Johan like this. I'm like, Johan, is this guy speaking Spanish or what's happening? He looks at me, he's like, I don't know. I don't know, you've got me. So coming back to the first race we were going to do, Horacio told us a few things that we were racing the next day. We understood we were racing because he showed us the racing calendar. And racing in South Africa is much different to racing in Europe. So,
which way? What?
So the races in South Africa start at 6 o'clock in the morning.
6 a.m., yes.
6 a.m. In Europe, it only starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Why?
So that's where the miscommunication came in. I thought that he said we had to be at his house
at 2.
At 3 o'clock in the morning to leave to the race. It was actually a shorter distance race. So we actually had to be at his house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because the race was only going to start at it was a local race. It's only going to start at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we pitch up to his house. I ring the bell, and he comes out so confused, and he starts screaming at us because I didn't understand it was supposed to be.
You 12 hours early.
12 hours early. And while he's screaming and going on, I'm just looking at you. I'm like, I don't know what this guy is saying, but we're definitely racing today. It's on the calendar. So let's just sit here and wait. And yeah, we waited for a few hours until he woke up because he went back to bed. And he actually took us back to the accommodation where we were staying, and then he got someone to write down for us. We actually had to be at his house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, that was quite an interesting
Very
experience.
Interesting. So you start 3 o'clock, and then the race is normally depending on the distance, but I suppose it's anything from an hour and a half, and then you finish up, and then it's night.
Yeah, so that specific race was a small race, like I explained, and it was a short distance. So it was, I think, as far as I remember, it was about 2 hours long. But usually the racing in Spain and Portugal is about 4 hours long.
4 hours
Yeah,
per
4 to 5 hours
per
long.
race. So, my friend, you've had this. I mean, you've had these experiences, this massive career. You've learned so much, both locally and overseas. If you could go back, at the start of your career, even in Europe or as a young man, what would you take back with you that you know today that will help you to be a more rounded athlete? If there was one thing that you could take back with you at the beginning of your career, perhaps the audience on that's going to watch our interview is going to say, oh, I never thought of that. I'm at the start of my career now, or I can take this and advance my career. What would that be? Would it be training programs, nutrition? What's the one thing that you wish you knew then that you know now?
So back then there was an old mindset, training-wise, that the more you train, the faster you get. But in recent times, we've seen with all of the science that's come out that the further you ride, it's not going to essentially make you faster. No. So intensity is definitely the main focus. Back then, we also didn't really know how to structure the programs properly. We didn't understand the data that was available. Because
is there more data available now? Of course there is.
There's definitely more data available, but on the bikes, most professionals do use them. You get a device called a power meter.
Okay.
So we were using power meters back then, but no coaches really understood how to properly use it to an advantage. So they would look at the data and they would say, great, you rode 4 hours today, you only spent a minute and a half coasting, which is essentially not pedaling.
Okay.
And they would think that is ideal. But in recent years, the studies have given us so much intel into how properly structure the training programs and how to benefit from these intervals and rest interval recovery ratios. So definitely, if the data that we have available today and all of the information we have available training-wise was available back then, or if the top coaches in the world back then maybe already knew about this, but they didn't want to share it with anyone, could have shared it with us, we would have definitely, South Africa in a whole, all of the cyclists here, top cyclists, would have been on a different level.
I agree with you. If you want to improve in any area of your life, including marriage, you have to go and look at data. You have to see historically how it was done, what's improved, and how can we take that improvement further. And very interesting. So data will be your number one asset to take back, analyze it with the eyes and the brain that you have today, and then adjust your training, your intensity training, rather than how long you can last with coasting for a little bit of time.
Exactly.
Beautiful. I love your answer, because you can use that answer in every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Just gather data, analyze the trend, and then there's your leak. You can go and fix that.
Yeah, exactly. Like in business, you don't want to waste time. You don't want to waste a whole day with something that's not working. So if you can maximize the effect that you get with short, intense intervals, why do you want to spend the whole day on the bike?
Absolutely.
For something that's not going to make you faster.
Absolutely.
Essentially, speed and power is what wins races. It's not the guy who can last the longest.
I would never have said that, because in my mind, eventually everyone gets tired. So if I can outlast you in terms of the amount of rotations I can do per minute or per second, then I should win. But it makes perfect sense what you say. So you're a professional coach. You're an intense one-on-one. You're a coach. When you meet someone for the first time, can you tell a champion when you first meet them? I don't know if the question makes any sense.
It depends if they've done cycling before.
Let's say, for example, there's a young man, he loves the sport, he knows he needs to deal with the best, which is you, finds you, reaches out, and you agree for a one-on-one session. What do you how do you tell if this person really has what it takes?
Yeah, so there's a lot of athletes out there who are, how can I say, optimistic.
Yes.
They're optimistic that
I'm
they
one.
can become
I'm one.
professional cyclists. They don't know how hard it actually is, because there's a lot of setbacks. Firstly, sickness, injury, crashes, cliques. So, for example, cliques in teams on the road.
Cliques meaning people
who group together, who like each other.
Okay.
So those are all obstacles that you have to overcome if you want to become a professional cyclist. So the mind of a champion is something that a person either has or they don't.
What are some of the telltale signs? I'm sorry, I'm diving into it,
definitely.
but I'm fascinated by a winning mentality. Obviously, winning at all costs is a very extreme statement. I don't like the statement. You can't win at all costs because it will be to the detriment of some other area in your life. But a winning mentality in a specific field, what does that mean for you?
Dedication. So a lot of the athletes, like I said, they're optimistic in becoming professional cyclists, but they don't know how hard it really is. Weather, for example, they might. There's a lot of athletes who says they want to become pro, but when it's raining or if it's cold, they don't put in the work they need to put in. They'll always try to get something that is an excuse for them to complete their whole session. Like a puncture, for example. They would go out riding, they have a puncture, then they'll phone someone to come pick them up because they didn't take the tools with, but then they won't go and ride again, for example. So dedication is definitely the number one characteristic that someone needs to have to become a champion. Secondly, you have to have good genes, so physiology plays a big role.
What does that mean in your sport? Like a longer leg, a longer limb, a shorter limb, a bigger, because you are very lean. I think, I'm afraid to ask, but your body fat percentage is probably 10, less than 10?
Yes, under 10. Yes.
Is it under 10?
Yes.
That is, well done. That is very close to impossible. So what does the physiology of a champion look like?
So that all depends on where he is in his cycling career.
So that differs from the beginning and towards the end, because you conditioned towards the
you have to condition
middle.
the athlete. And in cycling, there's a lot of different disciplines. So you get sprinters, you get climbers, you get time trialists, you get good all-rounders. So for sprinting, you would essentially look for someone who's a bit more stocky built. So
bigger legs,
bigger muscles in the legs, bigger calves, because from the calves there's a lot of explosive power.
Okay.
Bigger glutes, for example. They obviously shouldn't have too much fat on them.
Yes.
But the leanness of the athlete doesn't determine how good they are on the bike.
Not.
Especially for sprinting. So sprinters, essentially, the heavier they are, the easier they can keep their momentum.
Because you're using body weight for a short distance burst.
Exactly. So if there's a little bit of a resistance coming from the front, like a headwind,
yes.
The bigger you are, the easier you maintain that speed. So let's say your lead-out rider. So a lead-out train is for example, you have 4 riders leading up to the last 250 meters in a race. 3 kilometers before that 250 meters, you have 4 guys riding on the front as fast as they can. As they get tired, they pull off, and essentially you want to leave your sprinter with 250 meters to go from the line.
So that's a team tactic.
That's
a team tactic. Okay, great.
Yes. So if they bring him up to 65 kilometers an hour, and they keep him there, and they pull off 250 meters to go, and the sprinter then kicks to 75 kilometers an hour, if there's a little bit of a headwind, it's much easier for him to maintain that speed than someone who is half his weight or 3/4 his weight. So for sprinters, you need someone who's a bit more stocky built, a bit heavier. They don't have to be super lean. They just have to have a bit more muscle mass
Power.
in the glutes, in the calves, and in the quads.
Okay.
So for climbers, it's a different story, completely different. So you want them to be as lean as possible. So climbers typically look. If I put it in layman's terms, a bit more anorexic, if you can put it that way.
Okay.
So they'll be really skinny, very little muscle mass they're carrying on their bodies, because you want to maximize the watts per kilogram that they can push.
Okay.
So the wattage, so watts per kilogram is physically the power that you can put on the pedals, divided by your amount of body weight.
How much does an elite climber weigh, more or less? It also depends on the height, but
Depends on the height.
Average.
But, on average, below 67.
That's very light.
Yeah, below
very
67
light. Okay.
kilograms.
Okay.
So that's really light. If you're looking at normal world standards for
People
general
walking
people
around, yeah, especially
Yeah.
for men. Yes.
Yes, it's very light. So a lot of the peer climbers would weigh about 60 kilograms.
Wow.
or maybe even less. But yeah, you want to maximize the watts per kilogram that they can push, because of the resistance that the gravitational energy of the Earth exerts on them when they're going uphill.
Yes.
So for a sprinter, they typically sprint on a flat road, so the gravitational energy it's much lower. But for climbing, it's much different.
Beautiful. And in terms of nutrition, is it? I've recently received help from a man by the name of Jock. He runs a company, Kaizen, and I've lost 14 kilograms in 9 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've lost 14 kilograms, gained about 3 kilograms of lean muscle, and I'm on a super strict diet. Is it similar? Is it way of food? I mean, when you want to get to an elite state like you, is it calorie intake, protein needs to be weighed, how does that work? How does that work for an athlete at that level? Is it super strict?
Yeah, so I would say it's more lifestyle, so a healthy lifestyle. But if you're really building up towards an important race, you have to look at what you're eating properly. So the percentage of protein that you're taking in, the percentage of fat, the percentage of carbohydrates that you're taking in, everything needs to be calculated according to what kind of rider you are. So generally speaking, and also the supplementation that you use.
Yes.
So for a sprinter, for example, we'll add some creatine to their
to the intake.
Supplementation.
Okay.
Because it gives more explosiveness. And then if we look at climbers, for example, we want to burn as much fat as possible to make them as light as possible.
Okay.
So we'll introduce more longer efforts, like 10 to 40 minute efforts just below their functional threshold power, and we'll also incorporate some obviously legal supplementation like carnitine, which helps to burn the athlete to use the fat in their body for energy, and essentially then helps with weight loss.
Okay, beautiful. So it's amazing, because I never thought of it that way. There's a climber, there's a sprinter, and then there's a all-rounder. So let's have a look at your guys that stay at peak level. I mean, that is so calculated. Lifestyle, watch what you eat, watch what goes into your body in order to be able to maintain it at that pace. Awesome. Now, COVID. I just want to touch onto the COVID subject, and then we'll jump out there. How did it affect you and your business and your training? I suppose you've got bicycles at home that you can use to stay in shape. But what happened with the races? How did it affect you and some of your customers?
Yeah, so everyone knows that COVID was devastating for sports in general.
Yeah.
So when it hit and they cancelled all of the races, I was actually sitting in Cape Town, ready for the Cape Epic, which is one of the biggest mountain bike stage races in the world, or actually the biggest.
In the world?
In the world. So that is essentially the Tour de France of mountain biking.
And how long did you train for that, to be ready for that specific race?
I was actually ready for this 2020 Cape Epic. Sure, I put a lot of effort into going there. I got the Canadian national marathon champion to come to South Africa, so I paid his flights. I took him to the Tankwa track. I took him to the Sabi Classic, just in preparation to go to the Epic and to make sure he's also in peak physical condition. Unfortunately, the Canadian, his name was Alexander Viale, about a week before the Cape Epic was going to happen, he still wasn't really where he had to be. So the only option for me was to change to my other teammate that I had, a South African guy called Timo Cooper. We raced well together, so I told him, okay, Timo, I hope that everything has been going well with your training, because I told him since the beginning, before I got Alex on board, that he needs to be ready for the Epic in case something like this happens.
Yes.
So luckily, Timo put in a lot of effort that year. And he was ready, he was on good form. I paid the flights, I paid the accommodation, I let them service the bikes, they put on new cassettes at the back, so cassette is essentially where the chain runs on. I put on new chains on the bikes, we did suspension services, new pivot, bearing, everything was 100%. And then a day before the Cape Epic was supposed to start, we get an email that it's cancelled. We put in all of the work, we paid all of the accommodation. The day before,
it's disappointing.
Yeah, so that's very disappointing. So we lost all of the money for the entry, which was 93,000 rand.
Lost the money
because essentially what happens is when the race got cancelled, the Epic said they will only give you a discount on the following year's entry.
I suppose because they had to secure a venue, they had to secure a lot of resources. Ambulances and all the
yes, of course, and they already paid all of those services.
It makes sense. It's very disappointing though.
Yeah, so we lost the money of the entry, lost the money of the traveling there. I sent the bucky down of a driver because we have all of the branding on there, and we needed to be at the event for publicity for the sponsors. We lost the services that we did because we did it the 2 days before the Epic was going to start. Took off from work. So it's a
big loss.
It was a big loss. So that was the first problem we encountered with COVID. Then after that, all of the races got cancelled, almost for the whole year. So all of the sponsors were halving their sponsorships.
Yeah.
So they pulled out 50% of their funding that they were supposed to give to us. That essentially cut our salaries in half. And then at the end of 2020, our main financial sponsor, because of COVID, they couldn't do anything else but withdraw their funding from the team.
Like so many industries.
Yeah. So like most industries. So we're not special, but it did take a big toll. Luckily, I saw the opportunity to merge all of the other partners we still had on board with an existing road team called Alpha Bodyworks.
Okay.
And then we formed a combined road and mountain bike team for 2021.
Beautiful. Still exists?
No, so unfortunately, we are moving on to a new title sponsor this year.
Okay.
I'm still keeping it a bit on the down low.
Okay.
But as soon as everything is 100% finalized,
and you'll make the big announcement.
We will announce it soon.
Beautiful. So if I come to you and say I'm a regular guy, I'm a business guy, I've run a company, we've got employees, I've got lots of stress, lots of opportunities. I want to complete a 94.7. This weight, it's in November. 94.7 is in November. Like I like using the term manage expectations. Like, what's that conversation like? What will it take? The last time I rode a bicycle was a couple of months ago. I did a 21, very uncomfortable. I felt like I'm gonna die. But I want to manage expectations. What will it take from me to be able to finish in terms of nutrition and training?
I would say nutrition-wise, not that much. You don't have to focus on the nutrition at all, basically, to finish it. But you would have to put in around about 8 to 10 hours of training a week.
8 to 10 hours of training a week.
So generally that's about an hour a day with a longer session over the weekend.
Okay.
So yeah, leading up to the event, I would say 3 months of preparation before the time is enough, just to finish.
Really?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. 8 to 10
it
hours
sound
a
doable?
week. Yeah. It sounds doable. I can give you an hour a day and a little bit of a longer session on the weekend, and then you'll be able to finish.
Definitely.
But what will it take? Obviously, you can't do it in 6 months. But what would it take, to finish strong? To finish, how much training will it take to finish strong?
I'll say
top 20, top 15,
top 20.
top 20.
Sure. Okay, then it will take a few years.
It will take a few years before you're ready for
Definitely, because your body has to adjust to the training load. And starting from zero, for example, we don't know how long it's going to take your body to adapt to the training stress. And also your living stress
as well
adds to the recovery of your body. So if you have a lot of stress at work, at home, if you don't eat properly, then all of this contributes to your recovery rate.
Okay.
And then essentially, the slower you recover, the slower you progress.
Makes perfect sense.
So the more you can rest, the less stress you can have, the quicker you will progress. And then obviously physiology plays a role again. It depends on how good your lungs are, what kind of composition your blood is, and the muscle fibers that you have. If
it's that technical, eh?
Yes, but you can't measure it really beforehand.
Yes.
As soon as you start training, we can quickly see how fast you're recovering, what we need to do to adjust and get to reach your goals.
In terms of training at that level, we had an off-camera conversation. Some, leading up to your ability, your physical ability today, you were spending 6 to 7 hours on a bicycle seat every day to get you there, and now you're maintaining that because it's been pounded over the past few years. You're maintaining it by spending an hour and a half a day, but still you are at that peak level. I mean that's incredible. How long did it take you to do those 6-7 hour sessions? Was it years? Was it months?
So as soon as I finished school, like I said earlier on, my goal was to become a European professional cyclist, and we didn't have much data available on to how to do things properly, and we generally thought the more hours you spend on a bike, the better you're going to get.
Yeah.
So usually over December, so from the start of December to about mid-February, we would spend a lot of time on the bike, and then only after that start adding more intense sessions. But still keeping the load high. So we would do about a week of 25 to 30 hours on the bike during December.
Incredible.
And then you'd add some gym work to that. So essentially you would get to about a 35-hour week of training, which is at this stage, when you're still getting into the sport, and if you want to reach a high level in the sport, I would suggest it's a good thing to start with high volume, just to make your body used to the training load.
The stress
that it does have on your body, especially if you're going to be going into stage racing. For example, the Cape Epic or any other 3, 4 or 21-day stage races like the Grand Tours, like the Tour de France. You need to be able to handle the stress. Your body needs to be able to adjust. So I would say if someone had the aspiration to really go professional one day, they also need to start with a proper base, and then only later on, after a year or two, you can start looking at minimizing the hours that they spend on the bike over December, but maximizing the intensity that they do.
Makes
so
sense.
We would do longer intervals. It will still be around a 20 to 25 hour week, but not a 25 to 30 hour week.
But very intense.
More intense.
Makes sense.
Yes.
So it takes a village to raise a child. Who were the 3 most influential people over your life and your career, and why?
So I would definitely say the coach I had back then, Barry Austin. He had a big influence on my cycling career when I was just exited school in 2010. He taught me a lot about training and how to structure the programs better than we were doing before. Then my first, the team owner that I rode for, Horacio Barros, he was like my father there in Spain. He looked after me properly. He's such a good heart.
Just grumpy when he wakes up.
Just the first time. Then he understood that we didn't actually know what he was saying. So the better I got to know him, the more special he got to me, and the stronger our bond got. So I still keep in contact with him, even though I haven't seen him for, I think it's 4 years now.
Okay. So over WhatsApp and Facebook and
yes, I would call him for his birthday every year, and I'll send him a message now and then.
Okay, great.
And when I visit my wife's parents in Spain, I would always go.
Oh, so your wife's from Spain?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I met her there in 2010.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Then I'll go and visit Horacio. So he was definitely a big influence on my cycling career. And then obviously I couldn't have done it without my father introducing me to the sport and developing me at a young age, and doing everything in his power to get me to the events and pushing me to become a professional athlete.
Awesome. And when the training is not on, when you're not preparing for a race, when you've got, if you ever do, but if you've got a day to just hang out and chill, who are you? What do you like doing? Where do you like hanging out? Do you want to go to the movies? Like, what's your typical day when it's just you?
Sure. When it's just me, it's difficult to say it's just me, because
it's obviously married with a child.
The wife and the child takes up a lot of time, but I enjoy that. So that would be my typical day. I would
Awesome.
spend a lot of time with my baby girl. Her name is Aria. She's now 1 year and 7 months old. So I enjoy spending a lot of time with her. And then the rest of the day, usually I would just try and spend some time with them, go and take my wife out for breakfast, lunch or dinner, whichever. That would definitely be on the calendar every time I have some time, or a coffee date. And then, usually over the weekends, I start analyzing programs for the rest of the week. So everyone who I coach, I start analyzing on a Saturday and a Sunday, and then I start building the rest of the week's programs for them.
Okay, great. And in your professional career, if you don't mind sharing a landmine, something that perhaps a mistake that you've made, or somewhere where you maybe took a wrong turn, and it hurt you a little bit in the sense that it set you back a little bit, and what was the lesson that came out of that landmine, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so when I was younger and I started to perform well, I got quite arrogant and
the ego came in.
Big-headed, yeah, so my ego got quite big. And I burned quite a lot of bridges with sponsors I had back then. But yeah, luckily over the past few years, I came down to earth, because not just because of performance at all, but
life experience.
Now you want to go back and look for a sponsor, let's say with a new brand that's available in South Africa. Now you're going back to the same guy who you pissed off 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'd say definitely burning bridges was a big mistake I made earlier on in my career. But I was young. I didn't really understand that sponsors didn't need you. They helped you out because they like you.
Yes.
So if I could change anything, I would definitely be more mindful of how I treated people when I was an upcoming professional. Because it was even before I became professional, I was still a junior athlete. So that is definitely one of the life lessons I learned. Because even these days, the same people are still in the sport, still wanting to sponsor athletes, and then you maybe pissed them off 10 years ago, and now they want to help you.
So remain humble, keep your ego in check.
Always stay humble. Never burn your bridges with anyone. You never know even who they would become.
Absolutely.
You never know. Maybe they not even in the cycling space. Maybe it's someone you meet out on the bike. You don't know what he does for a job or what that person wants to become.
Absolutely.
One day you need something for your team to run properly, and if you treat the people with disrespect, they're definitely not going to help you, no matter how good of an athlete you are.
Yeah, 100%. Because also people that sponsor you, you are in a way representing their brand. And if you're arrogant, if you're not level-headed and humble, you know, is that person a reflection of my brand? Take, for example, like anything that lace chips with Messi. Is Messi the type of person that represents our brand? Yes. You know, Adidas with Puma and Usain Bolt. Is he a represent? The moment he gets arrogant, have a look at Tiger. That's a perfect example. The moment that, you know, he stepped on big landmines, then the sponsors dropped him, because that is not a reflection of who we want to be perceived as. That's great advice, by the way. Thank you very much.
So it's something to keep in mind. Sponsors don't need you. You need
them,
sponsors if you want to be a professional athlete. So, yeah, just be mindful of how you treat people in general, because you never know who they are and who they will become one day.
Absolutely. Best advice you've ever received? What's the best advice?
Sure. It was back then from the late Barry Stander. I was racing with him and Christoph Salzer, which was the world champion back then on the mountain bike. So I actually crashed on my face, and this was in the Giro del Capo. So the Giro del Capo was a race, a 5-day, I think it was a 5-day stage race, the 5 days before the Cape Town Cycle Tour, or the Cape Argus, as everyone knows it as. On the first stage, my front wheel spokes all broke at once. And
what, was it on a jump? What happened?
It was on a tar road. So we were racing a road race. It's called the Giro del Capo, like I mentioned. And I hit a pothole, and all of my spokes broke at once. So directly, obviously, when your spokes break, I just went straight over the bars. I fell on my face. I broke 3 of my teeth, so this one's completely broken off. That one in half, and one in the back is also chipped.
Oh no!
And I lost actually most of the skin on my face over here, on my chin and some on my neck.
How fast were you going?
It was more or less about 45, 50 km an hour.
That's very fast.
Yeah, so it was quite fast. So I crashed, and I was lying on the floor, and the manager came to me, told me, listen, can you go on? Here's a new bike. I told him, listen, I'm definitely not going anywhere. I'm going straight to hospital. Because I can feel my teeth are broken and my face is
you know, I can't really go on. I'm missing 4 teeth.
Anyway, so
terrible.
Then Buddy went on that day. I think he came 2nd or 3rd on the stage, and I get back to the accommodation, and Buddy, who was our best mountain biker, back then, he was like 3rd best in the world, and I think he won the under-23 world championships on the cross-country scene. He came to me and he told me, listen, just remember, when things are going bad, really bad, it can only get better from there.
Beautiful. And that's great advice.
And that's definitely something that I've always kept with me. If it's going really bad, I just think back, and I just know it can just get better.
Yeah, we're at the bottom now.
We're at the bottom. It can just get better.
Up. Beautiful. Awesome. Love the advice. If you could spend one day with someone, dead or alive, who would that person be and why? Are you going to ask him questions? Do you want to hang out with him? Is it a sports person? Is it a business person? One day, who would it be and why?
That's quite a difficult question. But I would say maybe Albie Geldenhuis from USN.
From USN, okay, the CEO of USN.
The CEO of USN. Why? He's a big inspiration of mine. I think that for anyone to start a business where he started it at, into building it into a multi-billion rand...
Multi-billion dollar business.
Multi-billion dollar
US,
business.
Australia, he's
international
everywhere.
brand, one of the biggest nutrition brands out there. Just to pick his brain a little bit on how he overcame some of the obstacles. That's definitely one of my biggest, up on my list as the highest, the person I would like to see.
Have you ever met him?
Yes, I've met him before.
You've met him before.
Yes.
So, you know, young person to young person, the best advice I could give you in this situation, if I may, is just reach out and tell him, this is why I find you super interesting. I want to pick your brain. Can I please have an opportunity to have lunch with you or coffee or whatever it is? He might say yes.
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to actually be sponsored by USN.
Yes.
So I have met him a few times, but I haven't spent any quality time with him to sit down and discuss any of these obstacles that he had to overcome. But that
If you
would
don't
definitely
ask,
be.
you'll never receive. So perhaps asking will help.
Yeah.
I hope it happens for you, and I hope you spend the entire day with him. Next interesting question. If you could be in a room filled with people, they're talking about stuff, and you could listen, you're a fly on the wall. What room? Who's in the room? And what are they talking about? Now, before you answer, Jack Parrow, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Jack Parrow, it was Joe Black. He was going to love to be in the room and find out where all the Kruger gold is. So that was his answer to me. So
Yeah.
who would you like to, spy on, if we may say?
Sure. I don't know. That's something I actually can't answer. It's
Okay.
I don't think that I would like to be in a room without anyone knowing I'm there.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you. I can see
like
you're a genuinely good human being. You don't want to spy on anyone. You want
No,
them to
it's
know
not
that
about spy. Yeah, but I wouldn't. I don't know if there's anyone I would like to just have information of that they don't.
How about
think.
this? Albie is planning his next move into a different country, and he's planning it out loud and writing it on a piece of paper. I would like to be in that.
Yeah,
room.
definitely.
Okay, that's the room that we want to be in, just to see how he processes issues, what's his next steps, what is the potential for a disaster, for a problem. So yeah, that's perhaps a room. What was your first car?
It was a Hyundai Getz.
Hyundai Getz.
Yeah.
What color?
It was white.
Any interesting stories?
Yeah, well, I pimped it out obviously back then.
Of course.
How
old were you?
I got it when I was 16.
16?
Yes.
Okay. So did we have lights under the car? Like how pumped was
so
it?
it wasn't super pumped, so we
Okay.
didn't have lights on the car.
You weren't
or a
on
big
that level
exhaust,
yet, yeah.
But I put a DVD player in the car with a big screen. So it was actually a screen like this on the dashboard.
Awesome.
Red seats.
Red
And
seats.
some nice mags.
Okay.
And yeah, it was some interesting stories that we did. We went to Art Club, me and my one friend.
Oh, I've been to Art Club before. I've got a couple of those as well.
Yeah, so we actually spent the whole weekend sleeping in the car.
Okay.
But
and there's no salads in Art Club. Have
No,
you seen
there's
that?
no salads.
No, there's no salads there.
Yeah, so we were actually sleeping in the car the whole weekend. So we'd wake up, then we would go and shower at a friend's place, at a friend's hostel or something. But then we'd spend the whole day going out and night partying, and then at
Living
night
the
we'd just sleep in the car,
Being
just
young.
set the seat back. But you wake up early, so you wouldn't really rest because the sun comes up and you can't close the windows with any curtains or anything. So we were sleeping very, very little. But yeah, that's
Awesome. Great experience.
interesting story.
What's your dream car? If you didn't have to worry about putting the family in it, and what's your dream car?
Ferrari, definitely.
A Ferrari. I think you and Albie will be friends. I don't know. I don't even think he knows how many Ferraris he's got. He's got a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe he can spare us one.
maybe. I'll
We
ask
should
him.
ask. Yes, 100%. Favorite book? What's your favorite book? Are you a big reader?
I don't really read books, but I read sports journals.
Okay. Okay.
So everything to do with training and coaching and physiology. So I enjoy reading about that, new studies that comes out. So definitely anything to do with new methods of coaching, new interval rest ratios that you can try. Those kind of things.
Okay, so that's the sort of data that you're getting in the whole time.
Yes.
Amazing. I think that's why you're an elite performer in your field, because everything is focused. Every information is controlled by you. What goes in here is always controlled by you, and it has to do with your sport.
Definitely.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. What's coming up next? How do we reach you if somebody's watching the video and they would like one-on-one with you with a more in-depth dive into their training programs? How do they improve their times? Like, what's coming up next in terms of races where some of your athletes are competing, and how do they reach you? How do they have the opportunity to spend time with you?
So the next race for our athletes is the Gauteng Provincial Cross Country Cup. It's
Okay.
held at Harties this coming weekend, so on
Okay.
Saturday.
Okay.
And then for me, the next race will be Emperor's Palace road race. So that is the following weekend. I think it's the 27th of
Okay.
March.
Okay, great.
So yeah, for reaching us, you can just go on the website. It's besterperformance.com. You can just click on contact us. My telephone number is there. Our email address is there of the business. So any questions or information you might need, you can just get it from there.
Beautiful. It's been fascinating learning about your industry, learning about your sport, and I was very, very excited to have you here today. And thank you very much. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And it was nice being here.
Thank you very much, sir.